When we think of scary things in nature, our minds usually go to the big predators, right? The sharks, the bears, the things with giant teeth. But some of the most terrifying stories out there come from the things you can't see, the invisible killers, the diseases that turn an animal's life into a literal horror movie. And that's exactly what we're diving into. So, just to set the tone here, let me be perfectly clear. For this one, viewer discretion is very much advised. Seriously, you've been warned. All right, let's get into it. We're going to start with the nightmares you can actually see, the diseases that cause just visceral, physical horror. So, what happens when an animal's own body wages war on itself? First up, we've got a disease that's famous for turning animals into, and this is a real quote, the most down bad version of themselves. And honestly, when you see it, it looks like something straight out of a monster movie. We're talking about mange. Now, the mites themselves are gross enough, burrowing under the skin. But the real horror, it's their collective feces. Yeah, you heard me. All that mite waste triggers a huge allergic reaction, and an itch so unbelievably intense it can literally drive an animal insane.
So the signs of mange are just brutal. You get this extreme hair loss. You might have seen that picture of the hairless baboon from Zimbabwe. The animal gets super weak, making it easy for other infections to take hold. And get this, you know the legend of the chupacabra? The whole thing probably started because people were seeing coyotes with terrible cases of mange. For some animals like black bears in Pennsylvania, catching this is basically a death sentence.
And you might be wondering, can I get this? Well, yeah, it can jump to humans, but we call it scabies, and it's usually pretty treatable for us. But here's a little unsettling fact for you. We all have tons of other little mites living harmlessly on us, including tiny species that live their entire lives in our eyelashes. So, sleep tight. Okay, but the horror isn't just skin deep. We've seen the physical, now we're gonna go deeper, into the psychological, into the absolute terror of what happens when an animal's mind just breaks, when its own environment becomes a prison. Just look at the contrast here. It tells the whole story. In the wild, elephants are incredibly smart, they're social, and they can roam over 40 miles in a single day. But in captivity, a shocking 40% of them show symptoms of something called zoochosis. It's basically a psychosis caused by captivity, and it leads to these bizarre neurotic behaviors. And the symptoms are just deeply unsettling. We're talking about animals swaying back and forth for hours, or pacing in these endless trance-like loops. Sometimes it comes out as obsessive grooming. There was this one baboon who groomed her baby so much the staff nicknamed him Mr. Clean-Cut. In the worst cases, it can even lead to self-harm. And the really weird part, it seems to be contagious, like animals can learn these behaviors just by watching their neighbors. This brings us to probably the most famous case ever, Gus, the polar bear at the Central Park Zoo. This poor guy would swim in figure eights for up to 12 hours a day. It was a clear sign of severe distress. The zoo actually spent $25,000 on therapy for him, and Gus went down in history as the first zoo animal ever to be prescribed Prozac. All right, we've done physical, we've done psychological. Now we're going somewhere else entirely. We're talking about an enemy that isn't really alive, so you can't kill it, and it turns the brain into a sponge. Welcome to the prion apocalypse. So what in the world is a prion? It's not a virus, it's not a bacteria, it's just a protein. A single protein that got folded the wrong way. And you can think of it like a zombie protein. It bumps into a normal, healthy protein and forces it to misfold too. And then that one does it to another and another, starting this unstoppable chain reaction that literally eats holes in the brain until it looks like a sponge. And here it is, the most important thing you need to know. The fatality rate for prion disease, like chronic wasting disease, is 100%. Not 99 point something, 100. The second that first protein misfolds, it's already over. There's no coming back. And how do you fight something like this? Well, you can't kill what isn't alive. This number right here, 900 degrees Fahrenheit, that's the minimum temperature you need to even start breaking a prion down. Some scientists say you need to double that, get closer to 1800 degrees just to be sure. They're practically indestructible. And the nightmare doesn't stop when the animal dies. Not even close. Prions can just hang out in the soil or in water for years. They can even be taken up by plants, just waiting for the next animal to come along. It's an almost eternal threat. And look, this isn't just a deer thing. Prions are the cause of mad cow disease in cattle. They cause something called scrapie in sheep, where the poor things are driven to compulsively scrape all their wool off. And yes, there is a human version called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease.
Now, I know all of this can seem kind of distant, right? Like, these are things that happen to animals out in the wild. But this stuff intersects with our world in some really direct and frankly terrifying ways. Sometimes it's our fault, and sometimes it's because we're just as vulnerable.
Check out this cautionary tale. Back in the 1930s, this guy running a tour boat in Florida thought it'd be cool to release a few monkeys onto an island to spice up his jungle cruise. Just one tiny problem: he had no idea the monkeys could swim. So now there are hundreds of them roaming the park, and up to a quarter of them carried the deadly herpes B virus, all from one simple mistake.
Okay, now for what is maybe the single most horrifying disease of them all, mainly because we are 100% susceptible. The path of rabies is a one-way street. It gets in, usually through a bite, and starts the slow climb up your nerves toward your spinal cord. The second it reaches the brain, it's game over. There is no cure. From that point on, the virus takes the controls, rewriting the brain for one single purpose: to spread. And these numbers just show you what a huge global problem this is. Rabies kills nearly 60,000 people a year. And once you show symptoms, the fatality rate is basically 100%. It's one of the surest death sentences in all of nature. And the most heartbreaking part? 40% of those deaths are kids under 15.
Here's what makes this virus so diabolical. It's a master manipulator. It rewires the brain to cause hydrophobia, a fear of water, because if the victim swallows, it would dilute the virus in their saliva. At the exact same time, it cranks aggression up to 11 to make sure the host bites something and passes it on. It turns its victim into a perfect, purpose-built weapon.
You know what? After all that absolute horror, we need a win. We need a moment of pure human triumph. So here it is. During a Spurs game back in 2009, on Halloween of all nights, a bat gets loose in the arena. People are freaking out until Manu Ginobili just casually walks over and backhands the thing right out of the air. And then he helped his team to a 20-point win. What a legend.
So what do you take away from all this? Mites, prions, viruses? I think it shows us that we are completely surrounded by this vast, invisible biological world, right? A world that's operating by a totally different set of rules that are completely alien to us.
And as we've definitely seen today, it's a world that is totally, completely indifferent to us. It's a world that doesn't always have our best interest at heart. Which kind of makes you wonder, how much of it is still out there waiting to be discovered?